Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the First Class, Second Place podcast. I'm your host, Jason Enrique, and with me today, I have another very special guest. I have with me, from all the way from the Bronx to the Bricks, I got here Latino. How you doing?
Bronx to the Bricks. I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming through, man. I really appreciate it. All right, so let's start. So let me start off the show with the question that I ask everybody that comes on my show. Please tell me the beginning of your New York/Jersey story, meaning where were you born and raised and what was your upbringing like?
For sure. So born and raised in the Bronx, lived there since I was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. I lived 2003 Walton Avenue and Burnside Avenue, close to Fordham. And grew up there, was brought up Puerto Rican, brought up very multicultural neighborhood. And then I eventually, I think it was like 11 years old. I moved to Newark, New Jersey, and I pretty much lived there most of my life. We spent maybe like 2 months in Kissimmee, Florida.
Oh, okay.
And when I was like in sophomore year in high school, and then we just moved back to Newark, and we just stayed there forever. Still there now.
Right. Now, what was the reason behind moving from New York to New Jersey? Was there like maybe job opportunity from your mom, or just trying to get away from the trials and tribulations of the Bronx? What was it?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know why my mom moved from New York to Jersey. Actually, when we actually didn't move to Newark first. We actually moved to Belleville first when we moved from New Jersey. Yeah. But I guess the reason was I think my mom got a job opportunity out in Jersey. I think she maybe like in terms of like living and expenses was probably like cheaper to move to New Jersey or something like that. She got a bigger place from where we were living. It was a bunch of stuff with like family as well. There was a bit of a falling out around that time with like my father, so she wanted to get away from him at that time as well. Older sister went to college. It was just a bunch of stuff where my mom just wanted to take her youngest kids and just move to a new place, new beginning, new setting, and then put us in like new schools and stuff. But when I was living in the Bronx, I was actually my mom's a teacher. She was a special education teacher for about like 25 plus years.
Okay.
Worked mostly with autistic kids, from babies to adults. And I think she just found like a better opportunity out in Jersey and decided to take all the youngest kids with her. It was my 2 younger brothers and one of my older sisters and then me. So it was like 4 of us. And then I had an older brother and then older sister. Older sister was in college, and I think my older brother was in the Army at the time.
Oh, wow.
So my mom just my mom, single mom, and then just her 4 kids. And then we were just macking it, living it in Jersey.
Right. And it seems like no matter where you were, whether it was in the Bronx or it was in Newark or Belleville, it seemed like no matter what, you guys came from humble beginnings, because I know that there were moments where even when you lived in Jersey, you guys were sharing a 1-bedroom studio. Essentially, you and your brother were sleeping in the living room, and your mom had the bed, and so on and so forth. So it didn't matter where you stayed. It was just inevitable that humble beginnings was going to be the beginning of your story, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, my mom came from Puerto Rico. My family's from Calle on my mother's side, in La Montañas, and she, came to the United States knowing no English. My grandmother, her mom, didn't necessarily want her to leave. She just wanted to like pigeonhole her in Puerto Rico. But my mom obviously had bigger aspirations. She went to school. She was trying to get her master's degree around the time. Eventually she led up to like getting a master's degree, getting a degree. She moved from Puerto Rico to the Bronx with my older sister Jancel and my older brother Jose. And again, single mom, and learned English on the way. Then went to college while she had the 2 kids. And she was a hardworking woman, and she just, she made it happen, had more kids, and, and she, I owe a lot of, those experiences, like my mom, coming from humble beginnings, we get that from her, and she kind of like taught us, that no matter, like you said, wherever we were, whatever we were doing, we always had each other no matter what. And I think a big part of growing up in those humble beginnings was family, and that's kind of like how we, even though we didn't want to, that's how we dealt with living in like a studio apartment and sleeping all together in the same bed and the floors and all that stuff. So
right. And one of the things that it seems like you and me had in common doing my research and everything, is that, well, now your Spanish is pretty proficient, especially in your music and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I felt like, I never really got a chance to really, maybe I never even really applied myself to learning the Spanish that I should have, because now I feel like I'm stuck. But at least you got to learn it all over. But I know that there was a point in your life where like it kind of just went out the window, you forgot about it, and you had to learn it all over again.
Yeah, actually, my first language was Spanish
Right,
when
yeah.
I was a kid, because that's all the motherfuckers was speaking in at the house. And then I was in ESL around that time too, where they had to put me in classes. So they say ESL, but it's really it's like code for special education, so you can learn English and shit. That's what they did with all the Spanish kids.
I was one of those kids in those rooms as well, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So eventually, I learned English and then completely forgot about Spanish. And then especially when I moved to Belleville in New Jersey, we went to I think it wasn't necessarily, I want to say it was a white school, but it was definitely whiter than what we were used to when we went to school in the Bronx. And then we just completely erased the Spanish stuff. So I had to relearn it eventually over time, which was definitely difficult. I'm still technically learning Spanish. It's definitely proficient in the music and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a weird thing because when I write the music, it's almost like I'm trying to create a puzzle, because I write all my music in English first and then I kind of translate it into Spanish and try to figure out a way to kind of make it sound cool in Spanish,
right?
Because my first language is English, so I'm thinking about it in English, and then I'm thinking about, okay, now what kind of slang? It's like a puzzle. It's what kind of slang can I put? What kind of Puerto Rican idioms can I put in the music and stuff, just so we can make it sound cool. So yeah, I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still learning Spanish at the same time, so I'm right there with you.
Right. I was introduced to hip hop and R&B at a very young age, and I was so immersed in the culture and in the music that I never really got in tune with my Hispanic side, so to speak. And as much as I should have, and I know with you and your sister, she was a big influence on you musically, because I think that one of the things that you were into first was rock music. There was a lot of Sum 41 and System of a Down and so on and so forth, and it eventually led you to being in a rock band at one point in your career. But before we get into that whole band thing, did you know that you wanted to do music at a very early age, or was it something that you kind of fell into? But did you have any other dreams or aspirations when you were younger? Did you maybe want to be a doctor, a vet, police officer, or maybe did you even want to go the Indiana Jones route?
Thank you for bringing up Indy. Still my heart. No, I mean, what's the crazy thing about it? It's when I was living in the Bronx, when I was second, third grade, I was actually in the Glee Club.
Okay.
So I was actually introduced to music, and I don't know why it was kind of it's almost fuzzy in my brain sometimes when I think about it, because it was one of those things where you're a kid and you're kind of just thrown into a Glee Club and a choir and you're singing, you don't even think about it. But we were doing, I have home videos and stuff like that of me performing as the fucking Eric from The Little Mermaid. We did plays like that. We was kiss the girl, all that shit. And we did Lion King. We were doing fucking Wizard of Oz. I played the Scarecrow. It was a bunch of stuff that I was actually in music without even knowing I was in music. For some reason,
a lot of performing.
Yeah, a lot of performing that I didn't even know existed in my lifetime until I saw those home videos when we found them. But yeah, eventually I forgot about it. And I wanted to, music was kind of erased from my life from when I was, I want to say between 10 and 17 years old, because I actually wanted to go to school to study archaeology and anthropology, which is where Indiana Jones comes in, because I wrote a thesis paper to get into Rutgers, into their program, and I wrote about how Indiana Jones pretty much influenced me to want to study other cultures, and even to the point where I was able to get involved in a program called Experiment in International Living right out of high school, where the city of Newark, or the Board of Education of Newark, actually sponsored me to go to Thailand for a month, and as part of this program to just study the culture and being, immersed with the people. I was in the mountains at a homestay village with these Thai people in Chiang Mai, Thailand for 2 weeks, learning the culture, learning the language, learning the people. And it was fun at that time. It was like something like very intriguing at that point. But then I joined a rock band and I was like, fuck that, I'm gonna be a rock star. And I completely just threw that shit out the window.
Wow, yeah. You know, the most intimidating part of anything creative, whether it's being a podcaster or a musician or a comedian or an actor, whatever, the most intimidating part is the beginning, because there's really no map or guide or GPS for that matter that's going to tell you where to start or how to, one of the biggest problems in the beginning for me when it came to my craft was the perfection. And obviously things weren't perfect at first, but eventually I got through it. So I guess what were the trials and tribulations that you experienced when it came to starting off at the very beginning of, your music career?
I guess, I officially started my music career when I went back to school. So I dropped out of college twice. I went to Rutgers. I fucking hated it because I was still 17 when I went to college to Rutgers.
I thought you dropped out 3 times, but it's okay.
Did I drop out 3 times? Maybe. I don't know. No. But it could have been. But
2.5. Who knows?
2.5, maybe. But I dropped out. I dropped out of fucking Rutgers after the first semester. I was like, fuck this. This is not for me. And and then the second time I decided to go back to school was Essex County Community College. Fucking hated it. Dropped out. And then I was just doing just odd jobs here and there.
Sounds like my life, essentially.
I mean, you know what, man? It's a real fucking thing because to be honest with you, Now I believe that college is a fucking scam. Obviously, the education system is a big fucking scam. Coming from somebody who has been in the education system as a fucking public school teacher, it's just all politics and it's all money and it's just no support, especially for the arts. But that's another story.
Right, yeah.
But as far as trials and tribulations in the beginning, when I went back to college to study music, a lot of it was just being introduced to a new community of people who were so much better than me because they were actually brought up in music or had families in music or being in elementary school, very early on age, just involved in music, where I was just kind of coming in from a more of a, because I joined a hardcore metal band when I was 17, 18 years old. And I was coming from that. That's all I knew was the hardcore scene when it came to music. And then eventually I fell in love with it so much that I decided to go back to school and actually study the shit and learn the shit. But a lot of it was just the real trials and tribulations, when I always reflect on it, was always ego. Was always me just trying to be or thinking that I can be better than the next person just because of my ambition was so high and because I was like, this is something I really fucking want. But it's the ego and then the being humbled very, very, very hard and very, very just for a long time being humbled and just understanding that, having those doubts, maybe this shit isn't for me. Maybe I should have fucking just, stuck to anthropology or archaeology and not got involved with this stuff.
But you know what? Sometimes you can get really lost in when you're an artist specifically. I feel like you can get lost in your own ego or your own, double personality. And I'll give you an example. So I was supposed to have somebody on my show a couple of months ago, and long story short, we basically had a falling out, and I broke the cardinal rule, which is where you don't get involved with people you work with. And one of the reasons why we kind of went our separate ways and why the show never happened between us is because I discovered that this person had trouble deciphering who the person really was. I'm not going to say who it was. I'm not going to put him on blast. But what I'll say is, I actually appreciated the person who they were when they were brought on this earth. But they were so immersed in their craft, and I have to respect the craft that they're going to go through because it's their passion. But they got so immersed into their alter ego, their personality, the person that they think that they should be in order to be a success, that it eventually became a turnoff. And listen, I wish them all the success in the world and so on and so forth. But I just learned that you could really get lost in that world and in that personality when it kind of makes me worried that it's like that saying, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. So I feel like people can get lost in that, and then who knows what the world can bring.
I feel like in the music industry, or just in entertainment in general, that's super, super apparent. I have these conversations with my friends all the time, and one of the conversations that I had the last time was about what is the purpose of the artist, or just as the artist in general, whether you're a musician or a painter or whatever. It's just as a pure artist, what is the mission or what is the purpose of it? And I've been coming to the conclusion, it's developing little and little, where I think the journey of the artist is the dismantling of the ego, because as you're purifying your art, you're being exposed to so many different styles and people and experiences in music that you can only be humbled and you can only be dismantling that ego as things go by. Now, there's people who say, well, you should learn how to turn off and turn on your ego. Super valid. But I think that the just what art is and what the artistic or the creator is that you're letting things in and you're being super subjective and you're being super not objective, because not everything in entertainment or in music can be objective because it's somebody's opinion or somebody's experience. So you kind of have to take it in without judging the person. And I think for a lot of people, and especially in this shit that we do, it's very hard for people to just like accept somebody for who they are and just so I think that dismantling the ego or just learning to kind of like, bro, it's not that serious. Like we're all doing the same shit. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to achieve something in a different way, but it's the same goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, continue on in your career. Now, I know that during the pandemic, it was a big moment in your career because I happened to see we'll call it the stuffed animals video, and which I thought was pretty awesome, honestly, because you not only did you show your talents as an artist, but I also think that you kind of peeled the curtain back a little bit and you showed a little bit of the funny side of you, because we were long lockdown. There was very little that we can do and so on and so forth. So you did the best that you could. You found a way to get your art out there, and you did it in a way that I thought was actually pretty funny, and it showed a comedic side of you, which actually goes to show a little bit of your personality that's deeper than just your music. So for those who don't know, what could you say about the infamous, your words, stuffed animals video?
The infamous stuffed animal video. It was just, it's like everybody was doing this shit during the pandemic. I'm no different, but I think this was like a moment in the pandemic where I was like, yo, there's nothing to do, and there's nothing to do other than be yourself. You know what I mean? And I was doing like different like covers of different songs, but making them in like my own style. And then eventually it came to this point where I was like, I'm just gonna didn't even think about it. It was just something that just happened. Put a bunch of stuffed animals there. You can't go see people. You can't go to shows. So give them all personalities and give them like names and shit. And it was just funny. It was just fun. And I think the video, it was a good video, but I think what it did was that it caught the attention of one specific person, which was the reason why I'm in the position I'm in right now. And
well, sometimes it only takes that one person.
It just takes one person, dude. And shout out to Reiko from Miami. He's a super dope Cuban singer-songwriter, guitarist, amazing person. And he saw my shit. He was a talent scout for this company called Epidemic Sounds. And he said exactly what you said. He was like, not only the music was great, he didn't even give a fuck about the music, to be honest with you, but it was really about the charisma and about the authenticity behind that video of just being myself, and you could see it. I didn't see it. I just thought of it as just as who I am, and I was just kind of like fucking around. But he saw that, and other people saw that. They liked it, and then that kind of sparked something that now it's a big thing now. You know?
Now you just said that it puts you in the position where you are right now with Epidemic Music. Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on what kind of position that it put you in?
Yeah. First of all, Epidemic Sounds being signed to a music tech company in Sweden called Epidemic Sounds during the pandemic was so fucking bizarre in itself. I was like, that was the first thing I was like, what the fuck? This is the real thing. What are the odds?
This is a COVID production.
Yeah, right. It's like, don't test me. But these he basically so I'll rewind a little bit, but he basically found me on Instagram, that video, and he emailed me. When you usually get like these emails and DMs from people on Instagram, you think it's a scam, like what the fuck is Epidemic Sounds? That sounds like stupid and way too close to home during this pandemic. So and then we had a conversation. And then to make it even more official, I had somebody act as my manager at the time to kind of like have that conversation, have that meeting, what they are, what they do. Epidemic Sounds, if nobody knows, it's a music tech company based out in Sweden where they make up 30% of YouTube's music. So they basically plug their catalog music from all over the world, Korea, Mexico, Spain, London, and the US, where I was signed. And they basically plug they basically have people, vloggers, influencers and stuff, use Epidemic Sound's music catalog to plug in for their thing to avoid copyright stuff, because you can't use like Beyonce shit on your vlog or your podcast or whatever. So you go, this is like another alternative where you can get artists who sound like some of these artists, and you basically just use them as you see fit, copyright free.
Right.
So at that time, they didn't have any Latin representation or an artist that was basically authentic to the style and to the genre of the music. They had like maybe 1 or 2 Latin artists on there, but again, around that time when they signed me, they were trying to get involved more into the Latin market. So they saw my shit, and then Reiko saw my shit, and then he pitched them to Epidemic Sounds, and then within like a month, I was just immediately signed to these guys, and it changed my life. Around that time, actually, I was living in my car, and I was actually kicked out of my girl's house around that time. Shout out to Jamie and Hackasack. But yeah, I was living in my car around that time. Actually, I was living with her, and then she kicked me out. Then I was living with my brother, and then he kicked me out the house. Right. And then I was living in my car, and then. During that whole process that was happening, I was still in talks with Epidemic Sound. But then, around, I want to say late September, that's when I finally signed the contract, got signed, started working with them, and then within a couple of 2 or 3 months, started getting paid, and then I was able to kind of be self-sufficient. And now being with them for for now 2 years now. Wow. Yeah, I've been with them for 2 years, and completely changed my life for in a way that I didn't think that it was possible, where you can make a fucking living off of just pressing buttons on a computer and writing songs and shit, you know? So it's definitely super surreal, but that was the beginning of this journey that I'm on right now.
Now, it's a question that I was just about to ask you was when you get approached by somebody who you don't know a whole lot of, you haven't really done a lot of your homework and everything, and they want to take a chance on you and so on and so forth. But me being an overly cautious person, if I was in your shoes, I'd be appreciative of the recognition, but I'm also kind of have a little bit of trepidation because I don't exactly know who you are. I don't know if you might be a scammer, because we really don't know people that are on the internet and everything. And I was going to ask you what basically gave you the confidence to go ahead, but you telling me that story about living in your car and basically just really at the bottom of it, of your life, you're down in the dumps at this point. I kind of feel like that gave you the motivation to say listen, I got no other choice. I mean, this is it or it's not going to happen.
Well, I think it comes, I fell in love with music. It was like being in a marriage, a long-term relationship with this shit. And I was madly in love with it to the point where I was fucking making songs. The first song I made was Se Acabó, which was the first song that I submitted to them. And I wrote that shit. I wrote it, I recorded it in my car, I produced it in my car, I did everything in my car, and then I sent them off to them, the way it was. And yeah, I mean, I think it's, you have to be skeptical when it comes to these kinds of things. I mean, initially I had a lot of support. I had the guy who was acting as my manager at the time, PJ, who knows more about the industry than I do around that time. You learn a little bit, you learn as you go with this kind of thing. But yeah, he knew about, in terms of negotiations and business talks and what they're about. I had him represent me for that. And because I trusted him, I trusted what the other party had to say. So it was one of those things where you kind of keep the people that you really fuck with close to you, and then you just you just kind of deliberate, and you kind of take a chance, and you hope for the best. And that's kind of what it is they approach you with something, they approach you with a deal, you don't know anything, but you're in a fucking car, and you're just bro, I'll take anything right now. And let's make it happen. So yeah, it was definitely it wasn't necessarily a risk, I would say, because I'd also do my research. I'm not a fucking idiot where I'm just yeah, let's sign this shit and let's go. But I knew what a non-exclusive deal was. I know I know fucking in perpetuity. I used to read. It's kind of nerdy, but I used to read entertainment law contracts for fun. After taking a class in
I was just going to say that
Patterson.
You were kind of doing that in school anyway before you dropped out.
Yeah, I took a class. I took a class on entertainment law, but I learned about it. But then I was I I had a internship at Atlantic Records as well, where I was working for the CEO, Craig Kalman, and like, you know, you're just learning shit as you go on. And you're learning these words, and you're learning what these A&Rs, the terminology, and all this stuff. That when you get a contract in front of you, you're like, oh, I know what that means. 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 I don't know what that means. So you know, find somebody who does know what that means. So yeah, it's all a learning thing. But I'm a fucking nerd, so I love reading. I love reading about just like shit that I don't know about. It's just based off of like pure curiosity, like human curiosity.
Right.
Especially if it's something that you love so much that you don't want to fuck it up. You want to know these things as much as possible. Yeah. So
now, one of the good things about you being with Epidemic is the fact that you are basically your own boss, essentially, meaning in the sense that you make the music how you see fit. I mean, not only are you a writer, but you also actually produce it and everything. Like everything is you're all hands with everything that you put out there. Now, being able to put out your own music how you see fit, you know, one would think that, oh, I could just absolutely do whatever the hell it is that I want to do, just put it out there with no rhyme or reason because it's what I do. But I would also think that, you know, if I'm in your shoes, it would you would still feel a little bit of quite a pressure as well, because you love what you do so much and it's your passion and it's your livelihood that you can't really fuck around. You know, it has to be the best that it could be, or else how are you going to keep on going?
Right. Yeah. It's funny because when I was producing and everything like that, as I'm producing and I'm learning like all this stuff, I'm obviously learning like different things. And one thing I do a lot of is I hang out with audio engineers. I'm friends with a lot of audio engineers ever since I went back to school for music. And the first class I ever took was audio fucking technology 101 in Bergen Community College. Right. And you know, ever since then, you know, I thought that that's what I wanted to be when I got back into music. Actually, that's what I was studying first. I went through so many fucking different things I was like audio engineering, music education, fucking film scoring, production, electronic composition.
I went just a sponge.
I just fucking try to soak up as much of everything that was around me as possible. But yeah, I think you learn this shit as you go, and eventually you get to a certain point when you make music and you're doing it to make a living, where you don't want it to sound like you made it out of your car, you made it out of your fucking basement. You want to make it sound like you want to make something that competes and that's quality, and that's like, because that's what I want. I want to make music. I want the music to at least sound like the quality of it is competing with motherfuckers on like the radio or whatever, what have you, because I think, you know, that's just my business mind, like talking right now. There's like the passion side, but like also when I'm making the music, I don't want my music to like, every time I produce, I hyper focus on so many different things. I want to make sure that the snare sounds good. I want to make sure that the kick sounds right, that it doesn't sound fucking like muddy, or all these different like audio engineering terminology that I just learned from other audio engineers who just teach me this shit for free, and just by befriending them. And yeah, I apply all that stuff. And that's why I'm so hyper obsessive with the music that I do, because I'm producing it, I'm composing it, I'm arranging it, I'm writing it, I'm singing the shit, I'm going to the studio recording it. So I'm doing a lot. And then eventually I got away from like the mixing side and the master, because I was doing that as well for myself. Right. But you realize you can't do everything by yourself, so you got to outsource. So there's I just hyper obsess over it. I think that's what it is. I think you really have to like love the shit so much that you're willing to just learn as much of it as possible, and you're not going to be lazy about it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You know, so as I mentioned to you earlier before we started recording, that the show obviously is called First Class, Second Place, and part of the reason behind that title is because people that come on on the show, I believe, are first class tier. And I must think the world of you if I want you to come on my show, and I want my audience to recognize who you are.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So, you know, what's fascinating about me, what fascinates me about you as an artist is the fact that when it comes to you doing your music, I can't put you in a certain genre, because your music is so eclectic. And even just from one song, it feels like it's so eclectic in so many different ways, and how you produce, and like different instruments that you feel like don't really go with this kind of genre, but you make it work. And to me, that's the purest form of being an artist, because it belongs to you and nobody else. Yeah. So is that a conscious effort, or is this just something that you just do that it feels right since the beginning of making music?
I think I stumbled upon it, but I also know that whenever people hear my music, they always say the same thing. It's like, that sounds different. Like that doesn't sound like anything. They try to like, they'll say some shit like it'll be like a maybe like a white person be like, oh, you sound like Bad Bunny just because I fucking talking Spanish and I'm Puerto Rican or some shit like that. But at the end of the day, I think fusion for me is like my biggest is something that I love so much, just because like. Just by since I was a kid being exposed to so many different styles of music that it kind of just like came up with me, and then eventually led to how I produce and how I view music. I just love to make I just love to piss people off. I think like I think that's what it is, because I love to like do maybe like put like mix bossa nova genre of music with like a reggaeton drums or something like that, something that you won't normally see, because it'll piss off the Latin jazz player, the bossa nova player. It's like, this, you can't do this. I've been told that before. Or like a salsa player, like mixing salsa percussion music with like I don't know, a synth like piano thing. It's super like new wave, and it's super it's just a fusion that when people listen to it, they're not necessarily used to it. Right. Sometimes it turns them off. Which is actually most times, and sometimes they dig it. But what they always say is like they've never heard something like that before. And I'd rather something that no one's ever heard before versus something that you fucking hear all the time on the radio and shit. I don't care if it's not getting a million plays. I think I care more about the fact that it's something that I'm on the right track, where it doesn't sound like everybody else. And I think I know that I want to stand out amongst this saturated fucking thing, this ether of music that we're in right now.
Right. Not to mention, I thought it was pretty ironic how you were mentioning about bossa nova, and you actually have a song called Bossa Nova Cane.
Bossa Nova Cane, yeah. And that was another thing. That was also me diving into Latin jazz for the first time, but also coming from like a background of Latin urban productions and shit like that too. The first fucking style of music that I was producing was dubstep. Funny enough, and I was super into like Skrillex at the time. I was obsessed with him. And then when I first got like a PC, like laptop computer, and I got Ableton, I just wanted to make dubstep and electronic music and EDM shit.
Right.
And also that kind of like carried on into like the music now, where it was like I was also fucking experimenting with fusion. And I think that's the thing for me. I think I'm like a mad scientist when it comes to this stuff. I love experimenting with different styles of music and see if they fuse. The music that I'm coming up with right now, dude, it's so experimental. I just came back from Mexico, and I got a chance for the first time to produce with a cumbia band, like a whole cumbia band. And we were just in a room, 12 o'clock at night. Around that time was my first day in Mexico. The cumbia band came into the studio that I was working at. I was working on some shit, and they're like, "Oh, I like that." And they were like, "Wouldn't that sound cool if you put actual instruments into it?" I'm like, "Of course it would sound fucking great if you had actual instruments in there." So they had the accordion player come in, the person playing the tambora, the drums, the guido, everybody, the bass player. And we were, after like a couple shots of mezcal, we came up with some crazy ass fusion called cumbiaton. And,
wow! And
the funny thing about that was we did this in November 2022. The crazy thing about that, dude, is, and this is what I'm talking about, and I hope artists like totally like understand when it comes to experimenting with different styles of music. You never know what the next fad or what the next trend is going to be. When we made that song, we had no idea that it was called a cumbiaton, or that it was a cumbiaton, or that was a thing. A couple days ago, my A&R actually showed me a documentary called Cumbiaton Total, which is actually an underground movement happening in Mexico. I forgot where, but it's like el barrio in Mexico, Tapatía or some shit like that. But Cumbiaton is actually an underground movement happening in Mexico, and it's gaining world notoriety.
Wow.
And it's especially gaining it in Mexico specifically. And it's like, what are the odds that we made something that we didn't even know that was underground, and now it's picking up and it's being played on like, fucking Telemundo and like all this shit, and it's becoming a thing slowly but surely. But it's like, but that's the whole point. It's like when you experiment with shit and you experiment with different genres and different music, you're gonna create something new regardless, and you never know if that style of music becomes a next fad. We think, well, my A&R thinks, and I believe him because he's involved in like that whole scene, but we think that cumbiaton is going to be the next fad in Latin urbano music. And we already have a song mixed, mastered, ready to go for the summer. when this shit picks up. So it's
I'm looking forward
crazy.
to that, man.
It's crazy.
Definitely looking forward to that.
So am I.
Yes. One day, when you went to drop off one of your old singles from back in the day called "Down My Drink," you said, "We all have our demons. Once you look at him/her in the mirror, you need to decide if that's who you want to be or who you have to change." If you can go back in 2019, what did you mean by that? Can you elaborate on that quote?
So "Down My Drink" was about the first time I broke up with the ex who actually kicked me out the house.
Okay.
But we were together for a year, madly in love with her, and we were together for about like 8 months. I had issues with like, mental health. I was very like angry. I was very like, not necessarily anger management issues, but I just dealt with things in a very angry way. And after we broke up, and we broke up because of my anger at that time, I wrote that song, and it was the only thing that I can think about, because I was literally, getting like really fucked up, drunk for no reason at all, just out of sadness, depression, anger, and all that stuff, and I was just really going down a fucking hole. There's a line in the song that goes, that Jamie's so good, but I don't think that shit's for me. Everyone thinks that when I talk about Jamie, I'm talking about Jameson. I'm literally talking about my girlfriend named Jamie, my ex-girlfriend named Jamie. That nobody knows until I tell you that's what it's about.
I was about to say, man, Jameson is my drink, so don't you dare talk shit about
no,
her.
No, never. I love me that Irish whiskey, bro. That's my favorite whiskey.
Absolutely, mine too.
But yeah, that song was pretty much about how I kind of like went into a really deep hole after that whole breakup, because I was, fucking wanted to marry this girl. I wanted to live a life with this girl. I thought she was the one. There was so many different things happening around that relationship that was like keeping us trying to keep us away from each other. But we stuck to it. But I was the one who fucked it up at the end of the day. And I wrote that song. And then we got back together, and I told her that song was about. She actually knew that song was about her.
Oh, she felt it.
Oh no, she totally felt it, because I remember I released it in December, right before my birthday, and then she hit me up on my birthday, and that's when we broke up like in September, and then we started getting back together, or just talking at least in December around my birthday. And then she's like, "That song's about me, isn't it?" I'm like, "Maybe."
It's fun. It's really interesting to me, because that's just another example of you just expressing your pain and your anger and frustration into your art, and just getting it out there. And it's also because I know that at one point, like, with what you see on social media, you're very, very creative. You're pretty progressive. You're showing this bubbly personality. You're all about smiles and laughs and so on and so forth. But you've even admitted to yourself and to other audiences that you kind of also a little bit of a nihilistic person at times.
I am.
So that goes to show that also is reflected in your music, and that's the kind of music and the kind of art that I appreciate, because at the end of the day, we're not infallible. We're all human. There's always going to be ugliness and also great things about us internally, but sometimes the best way to get it out there in order to help us get over that and evolve as a person is to put into something that we're really passionate about, a la music.
But nihilistic in the way, absolutely, but nihilistic in the way where it's not like, oh, the world is going to be engulfed by the sun and fuck everything, like, doesn't matter. No, it's more
not
like
that extreme.
Yeah, it's more like just we have such limited time on this world. Why are we worrying about X, Y, and Z when we can just be focusing on this one specific thing and going super fucking hard on that shit without worrying about like the world being engulfed by the sun and everything? Like, there's a lot of things that don't matter. Like, I think we just take a lot of things for granted, but there's also a lot of things in the world that just, that we put way too much attention on, that we should be redirecting all that energy and attention into something more positive. And I think when it comes to having a nihilistic tendencies, it's just more about, I need to do this shit before I die. Like, I need to do this shit as fast and as hard and as humanly possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love that.
Had to take a second for that one.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good. I also know that you once said that the proudest moment in your career is knowing that you were not going to go hungry anymore. Yeah. And honestly, I love that answer, because it certainly shows. First of all, it's certainly something to be proud of because of all your hard work and dedication that you put into your craft and everything. But it also shows the humility within you. And like most musicians, And I'm also proud of the fact that you've been able to become your own boss, essentially, especially in this world that we live in, where people can't even say that they love what they do for a living.
Right. I would say that, you know, I've met a lot of people in my life that have a backup plan, or not a backup plan. They have like a cushion to fall back on. Whereas somebody like me, where I come from, where we didn't even know if we were gonna fucking have food the next day.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, and then we actually, you know, my God bless my mom for that shit, because, you know, she always made sure that we were fed and stuff. But sometimes, you know, shit was hard, and, you know, sometimes we were only getting like white rice with fucking a fried egg, and that was it. That was your dinner, and that was your lunch, and that was it.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? I still eat that shit. I don't give a fuck.
Me too. That shit the other day.
You know what I'm saying? Put some salt, some pepper, we're good. But
I gotta watch my eggs now, man. Matter of fact, I gotta tell you a funny story real quick.
Go ahead.
So I actually had that moment where I was making myself eggs for dinner, and then one of them actually fell down and broke. And for the first time in my life, I'm 36 years, almost 37 on this earth, I actually felt what it felt like to lose essentially dollars in one egg because of the world that we're living in today. Especially with
the fucking eggs being expensive.
Yes,
I was
that's
like,
my
God
point.
damn it, why? You cost $6.99, bitch. Like, yeah, it's just, dude, trust me, when I get eggs, I relish in my eggs, and dude, you know what I mean? But yeah, dude, whenever I come home or whenever I go to the supermarket and I got like 4 bags of fucking groceries and I'm able to fill my fucking fridge up, dude, and I look at that, it makes me so happy, because, you know, it was never like that all the time. It was never like I have the privilege to and even to buy like shit that is actually healthy, like oat milk and like, you know, fucking whatchamacallit, just like organic shit or whatever, the stuff that you don't even think about when you're fucking like hungry and stuff. Is like, now I can actually like afford these things. Now I can actually buy these things, and they're a luxury. It's not like they're fucking like I'm just buying shit because I got the money. I treat everything, food is a luxury, and I think that's just by the way I was growing up and during that humble, you know, being served that humble pie every day, you know, when I was a kid. It's you know, you just think about how important something as simple as food can be, and how much that makes people happy, especially when there's so many people in the world who don't have that luxury. Right, you know. So I totally don't take that shit for granted. No matter how much money I make, I know that being able to fill up your fridge or your house with the necessities that you need to survive, that's the biggest blessing you're ever going to receive.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about your music. So before we started recording, I admitted to you that my personal favorite song of yours is Sangria, which actually is not your favorite, to say the least.
Not my favorite.
Yeah, not your favorite, but I still enjoy it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite song that you ever created, because I think that's a boring, overused rookie question that people have been probably asking you a million times in other interviews and so on and so forth.
Because I don't.
Right, good. But I will ask you this. If there's one song out there that you think perfectly encapsulates you as an artist and as a human being, like that's the best song to describe who you are overall, what song would that be?
Song, damn. That's hard. That's a tough question. It would probably have to be. It's definitely a Kid Cudi song. I've related so much to Kid Cudi. I was even called like the light skinned Cudi, like going to college and shit like that, because everyone thought I looked like Cudi. But you know, I think it's. I'm
talking about your songs, by the way.
One of my songs.
Yes.
So sorry. I thought you meant like songs in general.
No.
Yours. That makes it easier then.
Okay.
Then that would probably be. Encapsulates who I am.
Yeah, like this song is the perfect introduction to the world who does not know who Latino is yet.
I would say the very first song that I actually put out as an artist was Aguanile.
Great song. I love that one too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty dope.
That one was there's so much, only because that song had so much shit around it like happening, but that song is probably the best representation of what I want to accomplish in music, where it's like it has like that fusion But also I'm talking about something I'm really passionate about that I talk about in all my music, which is, or at least I reference it, is like my culture or the diaspora of Puerto Rico or the diaspora of the African diaspora and multiple Latin diasporas also that I'm super passionate about, especially like brown and black people who don't necessarily get that type of representation in Latin music, where a lot of it is like white Latin artists who get most of you barely see a lot of like a lot of brown and black like Latin artists just in general in Latin America. And I push that in my music, I go hard with that shit. Like even I have a song coming out on Friday called Morena that's strictly about my love for just black women in that diaspora. And I think that you don't hear a lot of that, especially coming from the genre of music that I do, where there is a unconditional love for my people, for those people, in the Latin space. So I think Aguanile is it's definitely like, not, I wouldn't necessarily say it's political, but I think it's just like, it's also a love for myself as well, like as a Puerto Rican and as a person in this, and also an understanding of where I come from and where I stand in that diaspora, and how there are people who are less fortunate than I am because of the color of their skin in that diaspora. So I think that I definitely play into that as well, playfully, not to like be like, we gotta like fight the power and like Aguanile forever and and all this stuff. You can still have that, but I also think that there's like a playfulness in where you can like express that sentiment in a way that doesn't have to be that can be entertaining versus it being super political. And I try really hard to stray away from being uber political when it comes to that stuff. I make it about sex. I make it about women. I make it about my personal experiences with that kind of stuff. So I try to keep it as personal as possible, but also like hinting towards that. And I think I do that in everything that I do. It's definitely a piece of me that I get from my older sister as well, Jancel, who taught me that stuff about my people and us coming from a large multicultural, diverse background of indigenous, of African, and of course of European. So there's definitely that.
Right.
For sure.
How about the song Vela, where I think that the premise of that song was basically shedding light on the darkest times for your loved ones.
Yeah, that definitely was that. Vela was like, Yo te prendo la vela, vela. That's a song where I'm pretty sure I wrote it for a girl. Did I write it for a girl? But it's also that too. It's also like trying to shine a light on situations, on relationships that are going through dark times, versus where you kind of try to see the light in a person. And you try to see the good in people, where everything, you can point out all the bad shit about a person, but at the end of the day, there's always gonna, like, I wholeheartedly believe that like every person has the potential to be a good person. We all have our faults and shit like that, but I think like there's definitely a light in people that kind of needs to be lit sometimes, and you kind of need to, not necessarily force them, but kind of like, like hint toward it that maybe there's some good in you, and maybe you can do something better, or maybe there's a light that you're not really discovering, that you're shutting down because of whatever XYZ experiences, trauma, whatever it is. But we all have a light in us. So I think Vela is certainly about trying to find the good in people and trying to find that light in somebody during shitty times in relationships.
Yeah. To anybody out there that's watching this or listening to this that are aspiring to be musical artists or musicians overall, basically following your footsteps, or just want to do something that they're passionate about, what kind of advice would you give to them in order to put themselves in the best position that they could be in?
Definitely have passion, but I think a lot of what's missing, what's lacking in terms of being an artist is the educational aspect. I think people focus so much or get so just encapsulated by the passion of making music that they forget that there's a whole other side of the music that you're not even focusing on. And I think that comes with education. I think more people, and it's even something that I'm doing right now that I started doing, where I'm kind of doing these live streams on YouTube now, where I'm actually giving people advice on production stuff like that. That's something I never really did not because I'm a gatekeeper, but it's more because I feel like I haven't learned enough yet to teach people about it. But I think that, and again, that's ego talking. But I think a lot of it is, I think when you get to the point where you think about giving information based off of experiences versus based off of, what status you are in the shit, then it becomes something different. And then that's when you kind of just like, all the walls come down and it's like, I'm just going to teach you guys what I know and you could take it. And if you don't want to take it, cool. If you do, then I taught you something that you can take with you forever. So education for me, for an artist, just educate yourself on the business, educate yourself on your craft, educate yourself on the genre that you do. Don't be like, oh, I'm gonna get into hip hop because it's a fad. No, learn the fucking greats. Learn the motherfuckers that came before you that brought this shit up.
Can't stress that enough.
You cannot, but it's like you cannot. I personally don't think the person is an artist if they don't study the greats. Because how the fuck are you going to learn? How are you going to progress the music and the culture further into the future if you don't know what they were doing initially in the past that made that happen in the first place? Especially like hip hop being like a Puerto Rican and black thing in culture in New York, in the Bronx, where it all started as like it was a political statement of the community of, fighting against police brutality, the shit that's happening in the neighborhoods, like all this stuff. That's where it originated from. Yes, you can talk about the cars, the money, the sex, the women, and all that stuff, but also know that it was this before it was that. And I think that more people need to educate themselves on the history of whatever it is. You do rock music, study the rock greats, study the Beatles, study fucking, if you are studying songwriting, study fucking Bob Dylan, study like Stevie Wonder, like study all these different people and learn about what made them so great, because there's a reason why their music is timeless and you can fucking listen to it forever till the end of time. There's a reason for that, and that's the reason why music nowadays is just like you play it and then you forget about it the next day. There's a reason for that. It's because it's the instant gratification, and you're not putting in the time and the effort into making a beautiful piece of art that can possibly be timeless and not just like a factory kind of like thing of music. So educate yourself on your craft, on what you do, and just obsess over it.
Yeah. If I was a musician in this day and age, I feel like I would have a hard time. Not just, I would love doing the music, obviously, because that's what I'd be in it for. But I feel like with everything else that comes involved with it, like you got to have, you got to go up against Apple's marketing team, apparently. You got to, be very active on social media. You got to create your own reels. You got to show personality and so on and so forth. And I just feel like, I don't know if I would be able to survive in that climate, but you seem to be making it work for yourself. Do you actually enjoy doing those other aspects as well, or do you just look at it as part of the game that you have like a small price to pay?
It's both. I think it's like you have to fall in love with it if you really like want it. In the beginning, it goes back to ego, because you're like, why I gotta fucking, I'm making music, why do I gotta fucking, vlog myself and then put it on YouTube for content? Like, this is so fucking stupid. But like, also you're showing people a different side of you other than the music, like we were talking about before, where it's like you're showing people a different side of you other than what you do for whatever business or your passion or whatever. You also like to cook, you also like to fucking work out, you like to paint, you like to do all these different things that it humanizes the artist. And I think people have a hard time humanizing themselves as artists because they're so hard focused on the music and the clout and the streams and the views and all that stuff that they forget that you're also a fucking human being, that you have all these other things that you fucking love that other people can really connect with you on. And that's a missed opportunity if you're not doing that. So I think eventually it becomes something that you just fall in love with. And once you fall in love with and you get into a routine, and it becomes consistent, then it becomes fun. Then it's not work anymore. Then it's not tedious. Then it's just like, I can't wait to show people this part about me, or I can't wait to show people me getting, like I'm getting tomorrow, a fucking colonoscopy for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And but think about it. I'm getting a colonoscopy for the first time in my life. And there are so many men out there who don't know that between the ages now, especially that it's getting earlier, like shit like colon cancer and prostate cancer is becoming apparent in earlier stages in your life, from 25 now to 35, versus how it was before, where it was like 40, like 50 years old as you get older. Right. And I'm like, I'm going to use this opportunity not only to obviously make fun of myself about the situation, but also educate people like, yo, get your asshole checked, because you don't know what the fuck is happening there. And it's apparent in men, especially black and brown men, Latinos and black men, where it's a real fucking thing. So yeah, you use your experiences to educate people, but also give them some entertainment, and you kind of like mix both worlds together, and you can make it fun. It doesn't have to be something where it's tedious, or like, oh, I gotta show this person this. It could be something where you're just, one, you're showing that you're passionate about it and you're authentic in it, and you're not just doing it for clout or for views and shit. You're doing it because it's something that you feel like you need to show people, and if they don't like it, don't be mad if they don't like it or don't watch it. It's out there now. It's in the fucking ether. It's so someone's gonna watch it eventually, and someone's gonna take something from it, and it's inevitable.
All right. Yeah. Well, I wish you luck with the colonoscopy, bro.
I'm afraid.
You'll be fine.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, just stay positive, my man.
Gonna put me on the side and shit.
Yeah. So what next projects do you have coming up?
So I have a bunch of stuff coming. I'm releasing music every month for the rest of the year.
Nice.
So I just released Caro. That was the first single that I released. And then this Friday, I'm going to be releasing my other single, Morena. Which will there also be like I'm doing for each single that I'm doing a remake of the song in an acoustic version in a different Latin style of music.
I see.
So for Caro, it was like a reggaeton / bossa nova thing, and then I turned it into a Latin jazz kind of a thing, but like a pure Latin jazz with like drums and like the instruments and all that stuff, versus it being digital. For Morena, it's like a trap salsa thing, and I'm turning it into a very traditional cumbia. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm also releasing a instrumental mixtape that's coming out February 23rd. It's volume 2 of Instrumentals.
Instrumentals, yes.
And what else is happening? I'm dropping my first album also later in April.
Nice.
9-song LP. It's going to be really dope. It's called Las que no me importan, the ones I don't care about, because they're like throwaway songs. Big single coming out in March as well called Noches de Sueños, which is a big record. And I'm also doing I wrote a song for the United Nations for something called the Heart 17 Project. If nobody knows what that is, Heart 17 Project is basically this program organization thing that the United Nations does for artists, where they get to write a song about a specific cause. It's 17 causes that they have. It's called the Heart 17, and artists from all around the world, from different parts of the countries, write a song about whatever the cause that they're assigned and stuff. So mine's was about sustainable cities around the world, sustainable energy, things like that, people having food, energy, water, basic necessities and stuff. So I wrote a song called The Lights that I'll be going to, I believe I'm going to Copenhagen in April for that event that's happening over there. So that's something that's huge. And then all summer, I'm just going to be dropping bangers, just all the bangers that I did in Mexico, all the bangers that I'm doing right now currently, where it's just like, it's just great. It's just freaking great. I'm just excited about it.
In other words, ladies and gentlemen, 2023 is the year of Latino.
This is my Jordan year.
There you go.
This is my Jordan year.
Yeah. Jordan over LeBron, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Awesome. All right. Shout out to LeBron anyway. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're about to close out this episode in a little bit, but before we go, I just have one more thing to say. So at the end of each show, I always ask people, if they were to make a movie on your life, which actor or actress would you like to see portray your character and why? However, in your case, I think I have the perfect one, and you could agree with me or not.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Anderson .Paak.
Yeah. I've also been called Anderson .Paak before, or like I've been compared to him many times before.
Well, I also know you're a big fan of his as well. So.
My name Laudito is
from Yes Lord.
Yes Lord. Yes. It's kind of like an homage to Anderson .Paak, because I just love I just think his music is fucking fantastic. I'm not necessarily trying to be like a Puerto Rican Anderson .Paak, but I definitely am inspired by a lot of things that he does in terms of like his personality, being authentic, and just being like true to the music and being super obsessive over it and being fucking good at it. So
absolutely.
So yeah, yes, a lot.
All right, well, we'll go for that. All right, and well, thank you for coming through, man. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this episode of First Class, Second Place. Thank you to my guest, Latino, for coming through here. Anybody want to give a shout out to before we close out?
I want to give a shout out to my two cats, Lilu and Day Day. They're at home right now, probably fucking up everything in my house. If you don't know who Lilu Multipass is, you need to get your life checked. And you suck. Yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah. And where can they find you on social media, and where can they find your music?
Everything is at Laudito, LAWDITO, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, on Spotify as well. All of it's Laudito, so go check it out.
Awesome.
Hope you guys like it.
Awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at Jason Enrique _ on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, Jason Enrique. And don't forget to follow the First Class, Second Place podcast page on Instagram as well. This has been the First Class, Second Place podcast. We out.
Don't know why I'm clapping.